The International Criminal Court is now seeking an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu and his defense minister for their genocidal policies in Gaza. The report highlights in great detail how Israel targeted civilians and used starvation as a tool of war. The report also outlines the use of torture and the Israeli policy of using collective punishment in order to put pressure on Hamas. This is devastating for Israel because their legal argument was anyone trying to hold them accountable was an agent of Hamas, but this ICC prosecutor was Israeli approved. This arrest warrant also covers 3 leaders of Hamas over the October 7th attacks. Just wait until the ICC realized that Israel targeted their own civilians on October 7th and then blamed it on Hamas. The ICC even acknowledges that Hamas has a right to armed struggle. I guess Hamas was just too good at it, apparently. It also doesn't escape me that the ICC put arrest warrants on 3 leaders of Hamas while only putting arrest warrants on 2 Israeli leaders. They even charged Hamas with more counts, even buying into the false Israeli rape hoax using Israeli testimonies. And this is not an accident. But you see the little politicking they have to do just to get Israel held accountable? The West is in shambles because for the first time, they are seeing their little settler colonial project be held accountable. And it also implicates them. This sets up Western leaders like Genocide Joe being held accountable for being complicit with the genocide that Israel carried out. And Genocide Joe knew this. This is why his administration was doing everything possible to block arrest warrants on Netanyahu by the ICC. And obviously, Biden failed. I cannot emphasize how great of a day this is. This is the start of a new age of multipolarity. No longer will the Western rules-based order weaponize the ICC and international law in hypocritical ways in order to punish countries in the global south. We are now witnessing the global majority use the system of international law to hold the Zionist hegemon accountable for their crimes. We already have Israel that stated that they will ignore the ICC and continue their genocide in Rafah. So we are going to see how real international law really is here very soon. What's poppin', my friends, my family? Welcome to a Tuesday, Nick at Noon edition of RBN Live. What's poppin', my friends and family? As always, big shout out to Hotspot. We have another Hotspot banger I was working on this morning because you guys know it's a new era. We got a whole new schedule in the way we were doing things. I mean, we got the Hotspot video I'm working on in the morning. Then I'm gonna come live to break down what I learned, the breaking news stories of the last 24 hours. And we covered yesterday, kind of getting my first reaction, going through everyone's initial response to the ICC ruling. And the establishment is handling this just as poorly as I imagined they would. It's all hands on deck for not only just design this project, but the entire Western imperial core, in a way. Because, as I mentioned before, as our dear sister Margaret Kimberly, who just gave an amazing speech, I think it was within the last day or so, what we covered was how the International Criminal Court has a history of essentially being a weapon used by Western imperial order in order to punish the global South, Africa, or any country that they deemed to be an enemy, or anyone who they want to control, any regime that they want to eventually overthrow. You even had Black Agenda Report, who wrote a great article called The Empire's Court. Once again, you guys know I got a lot of respect for Margaret Kimberly, Glenn Ford, the late Glenn Ford. You guys see, he wrote this in 2012. The ICC, The Empire's Court. And you also have this one as well, reported by Robin Philpott, the unbalanced scales of international criminal justice. So this has been long documented. That's why there are a lot of shock right now, not only among the Zionists who are in shambles over this decision, but among people who are supportive of liberating Palestine from this terrorist settler colonial project. And now we got a narrative victory over the Zionists that we will hold over their head forever. Because I've been saying for quite some time that Israeli Zionists are terrorists who believe they are above the law. They are war criminals who engage in illegal activity. And we can prove that by just our intelligence and the fact that we have receipts that back that claim up. But now we can, for the institutionalists, because that's what a lot of people who support the establishment, that's who they are. Now we can look at the institutionalists and be like, hey, man, you guys are standing against the foundations of international law. And I'm going to rub this into the end of time. Because imagine if Hamas was making the threats, challenging the ICC the way they have been. I'm going to show you guys Joe Biden's unhinged speech very soon, where he essentially doubles down on the Likud belief of Jewish supremacy. A lot of people are confused about why Biden is doing what he's doing. A lot of these young, dumb, progressive, not even young, but a lot of these Bernie-crats, I would say, are shocked at how bad this administration has been. And I warn people because Biden is the largest recipient of AIPAC money in history. He was supportive of every single Israeli campaign, even when you have people on the right, Ronald Reagan, that was speaking out against Israel. You had Biden who criticized Reagan for criticizing Israel's war plan. He's a staunch Zionist, not just out of corruption, but I think he's deeply ideologically driven as well. And that's what happens when you are in the Senate for 40 years. You have a country that provided for you. Israel provided for Biden, my friends. Israel created him, made his entire career. The Biden family, his sons, the entire empire is because of Israel. So not only is there corruption, but you got to look at the human element of this. Like, Biden is probably legitimately thankful. He's surrounded, and he's been surrounded by Zionists his entire life. So he's been deeply engrossed within the Zionist culture. So I think at the age of 81, 82, however old this crypt keeper is, I think at this point he looks like not only is he corrupt, which is a big part of it, he legitimately hardcore believe in Jewish supremacy. The idea that Israel, Israelis, the Jewish population, they can do whatever they want to their enemies because they are above the law. They are God's chosen people. That's my interpretation of his diehard support, because you have Biden and them, they're willing to take the entire Democratic Party. Biden is, in the Democrats, they said Donald Trump is the biggest threat to democracy we ever seen. Donald Trump is the biggest threat to our republic, but they're willing to sacrifice this because of Israel. And I think obviously there's corruption, but it has to be more than that. Maybe I'm being a sweet summer child. That's possible. Now I'm going to show you guys, this is why the Western leaders are in shambles, because they understood what the main objective of the ICC always been, was to punish and go after the global South and our enemies. And now this is incredible, and there are a lot of sweet summer children that are becoming radicalized, and I love it, guys. Like, I'm not picking on these people. Like, I'm willing to welcome these people with open arms. Because there's a lot of people who thought I said radical stuff, that Black Agenda Report and Glenn Ford and Black Radicals, they thought we said radical stuff for clicks, likes, I don't know, because we've been telling people about how corrupt the ICC has been. Well, the entirety, since I've been a citizen journalist, I extensively covered this with Murray Kimberly. I covered how you had John Bolton that put pressure on the ICC. You had Blinken and Biden, who rejoined the Security Council because they wanted to protect Israel from the ICC. This is not a new thing. Like, you guys can check the history of RBN. You guys can check my tweets. I have reported on the history of the ICC in both wings of the establishment, pressuring them for years. And people are just now waking up to the fact that the ICC is corrupt. So now listen to what, this is a damning admission. This is the prosecutor. He said when he received threats not to go after Israel, he revealed that a senior leader told him that the ICC is built for Africa and thugs like Putin. And I believe that senior official was from the United States. I might have to find a receipt to back that up. But let's listen to
of the individual is the protection of babies. I mean, these are fundamental American values that should engender bipartisan support. Now, of course, this situation, unfortunately, lies on the San Andreas fault of international politics and strategic interests. And of course, I've had some elected leaders speak to me and be very blunt. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, was what one senior leader told me.
That's the kind of shit that black left has been saying, that then white America will turn to us and say we crazy radical conspiracy theorists. This has been like a core premise of what I've been covering for the last 3 years now. The Western hypocrisy and how it's been weaponized against the global South. Well, I actually trying to tell myself to stop saying that, because it's actually the global majority, because not just the global South, because you guys see they weaponize it against Russia and China. So let me correct myself. I'm trying to actively make that change, where not just the global South, it's the global majority. You have the United States sanctioning 1/3 of the world's population. They are waging war against China, against Russia. It's more than just the global South. They are waging this war against the global majority that's tired of the global majority resisting their forever empire and their rule. Going for de-dollarization, trying to challenge the power of the hegemon. But anyway, let's finish this clip. We have Liam Cosgrove scheduled to come on. Hopefully we get him on here very soon. Also, big announcement. My boomer ass is getting more modernized. Listen to a lot of suggestions from our friends and family. Big shout out to Sabby and JB, who Sabby was talking to me like, man, you need to get your ass on Telegram. My boomer ass like, bro, what's a fucking Telegram? I barely know what this, bro. It took me forever to learn how to stream on YouTube, bro. It took me forever to learn this shit. So all these new stuff be popping up, like, bro, I don't know what's going on. So I'm finally on Telegram now. So if you're on Telegram, I got a link to my new channel on Telegram in the description. You will see all my hotspots, all the live streams will be posted there as well. I don't really trust YouTube because of suppression, censorship. So we're in a new era. We're making a big push to branch out. Telegram is huge right now. And I'm just now learning about this because I'm like so out of fucking, I'm terrible with this stuff. I told you guys I'm a Midwestern country bumpkin. You know what I mean? But so if you're on Telegram, I appreciate the follow. I'm trying to build that up from scratch starting today. So if you want to leave me a follow, I appreciate that. Let's get back to this video. And then I'm going to show you guys this speech by Biden, which is easily, and I keep having to double down on this because he keep giving these speeches that are completely and utterly unhinged. As Xi Jinping in China is talking about building, talking about infrastructure projects, uplifting the quality of life for his people and for the allies of his countries, the people of the countries allied with. As he's talking about building and growing, you have Biden talking about war, death, denying genocide, attacking international criminal courts. The contrast between China, Xi Jinping, and the United States and our leaders, how they talk, could not be clearer. And it's crazy that people still view China and the axis of resistance as evil for opposing this insanely evil empire that we pay taxes to. Let's get to this. Let's finish clip and we get to the speech.
Strategic interests. And of course, I've had some elected leaders speak to me and be very blunt. This court is built for Africa and for thugs like Putin, was what one senior leader told me. We don't view it like that. This court is the legacy of Nuremberg. This court is a sad indictment of humanity. This court should be the triumph of law over power and brute force. Grab what you can, take what you want, do what you will. And we're going to simply be, we're not going to be dissuaded by threats or any other activities, because in the end, we have to fulfill our responsibilities as prosecutors, as the men and women of the office, as judges, as the registry.
Oh man, you're such a politician. Now, and I think I made my point pretty clear in the last episode. This is a great thing. The panic you are seeing from Israeli officials is enough to highlight how big of a deal this is. The panic from the West, narrative alone, because obviously this is not going to bring down the Israeli regime, but the narrative alone for the Palestinian resistance, I cannot stress this enough. But I don't trust these institutionalists. This guy's a politician. He's like, we got these Western pressures, but I just got to assure you guys that I'm above it all. Shut the fuck up. You're not above it all. You are doing this because of pressure. Because the amount, as I said many times on live streams and through my hotspots, as much as Israel's on trial, international law, the ICC, this motherfucker in particular is on trial. So him do this whole act that he's doing, it kind of annoys me because I'm an asshole, I guess, who despise the people who are currently in charge and power. Because he's now trying to do this thing after waiting 7 months. After refusing to follow the suggestions made by South Africa to call for immediate ceasefire. After all this weakness in international law, you now want to come out and say, oh man, we really believe in human rights. We are above Western pressures. No, you're not. You're the one who is peddling the false rape hoax. Because in order for them to put the charges on Israel, and I covered this yesterday, they had to make sure that they charge more Hamas officials and put more counts on Hamas. And in order to put more counts on Hamas, they had to literally repeat with no evidence the rape hoax, where even the victims of the October 7th attacks, their families came out and said that their family members was not raped. And then when you look at the ICC file, because I read it in detail, the evidence they used to say that Hamas committed rape as a tool of war was Israeli testimony. Which is just as useful as Diddy saying, I'm sorry. Not anything the Israelis say, especially after their massive lies on the rape hoax, you're going to use them as a source in a court filing? That is damn near malpractice to do that. But with that said, I'm going to take the win as it is now. I just got to let you guys know what the criticisms of these people are, because we can't allow them to do this politician shit where they turn this tragedy into something they can write a book about. You guys have nothing to be proud about. The people who pressured you guys has something to be proud about. South Africa has something to be proud about. Ansar Allah in Yemen, they have something to be proud about. You guys don't. You guys did the bare minimum, and that's just how I feel about this. I understand. I'm not trying to be like a killjoy, because I understand there's a lot of happiness about this, but you guys know I generally hate Western institutions. I am very distrustful of the ICC, especially the way they crafted this, because remember, they are charging them with war crimes, which let them off the hook regarding genocide. They're letting Israel off the hook on genocide. And you're going to hear Biden in the West complain about the false equivalency between Israel and Hamas. You guys should be blessed. You guys should be thanking your gods every day that the ICC compared you to Hamas. Last time I checked, does Hamas have concentration camps? Does Hamas target the entire families of the people they go after? Does Hamas use starvation as a tool of war? Everything you guys accuse Hamas of, the worst thing you guys accuse Hamas of, Israel is guilty of. So as Israel was weaponizing sexual violence against Palestinians, as outlined by reporters and Palestinians themselves, the ICC left that part out. So as they charge Hamas with using sexual violence, they leave out the fact that Israel literally engaged in that same sexual violence, and they have a chief rabbi in the IDF that permits rape, the use of rape in war. It's a very common Jewish supremacist ideology that's widespread in Likud. So you guys see how, even though I'm okay with people celebrating, and it's something worth celebrating, we still have to maintain pressure and be critical of these international institutions. So let's listen to Biden. Liam Cosgrove is scheduled to come top of the hour. Hopefully we get him in. I'm not sure if he confirmed. Either way, I still got a show for you guys, but we gotta have Liam Cosgrove is scheduled to join us. Let's play this video, and I'm gonna have a lot to say, so let's get to it.
Extraordinary contributions of Jewish Americans to the nation. Look, the story of the Jewish people is a story of resilience, absolute resilience, from pain and persecution to hope and delight, even in the darkest times. The story that endures. Throughout our history, Jewish people helped define and expand the singular idea that binds us together as Americans. It's not hyperbole. Freedom, freedom, the bedrock principle on which this nation was built and that American Jews fought for since the 1600s after fleeing persecution abroad.
Bro, who was the majority of the slave owners? As we continue this disgusting revisionist history, and you're going to hear Biden is now in the story that liberals are now going to tell you. It wasn't the decades of organizing by Black activists who put their bodies on the line and were victims of the police state. No, Biden and liberals now going to weave this story that the civil rights movement, we got to be thankful because of the Jews. Even though there was a ton of right-wing evangelical Christian Zionists who was opposed to civil rights, now the story they're about to tell us is that it's not the Black Panthers, it's not Martin Luther King, not the organized, not the bus sit-ins, not the countless people who got their ass beat by the police. He's about to tell you the story about how Jewish people fought for all of our freedoms. Because the disgusting messaging that he's about to send to you guys is that he's committing a genocide, but he's doing it for the Jews. As they complain about the rise of anti-Semitism, what causes the rise of anti-Semitism was Biden is doing, saying that the reason why he's fighting international law, the reason why he's criticizing the ICC, the reason why he supports genocide is because of the Jews. That is what leads to anti-Semitism. You gross. I'll play this part again. Listen to this revisionist crap. I almost threw up listening to this in preparation for the show.
Throughout our history, Jewish people helped define and expand the singular idea that binds us together as Americans. It's not hyperbole. Freedom, freedom, the bedrock principle on which this nation was built and that American Jews fought for since the 1600s after fleeing persecution abroad. One of our nation's first commitments to freedom of religion was of the Jewish community in Newport, Rhode Island. It goes back a long way. 1790, America was just 14 years old. A local Jewish leader wrote a letter to President George Washington, expressing his hope that America would be a nation of religious freedom, not just for Jews, but for all citizens.
Now you guys are saying that we must support the political demands of the most radical faction. We must support Zionism, or we will be victims of police violence. So the story that he's telling is a story that how Jewish people invented the concept of freedom of religion. And whether this is true or not is irrelevant, because you guys are not even following that original mandate. Because if you guys really believe in freedom of religion, we should be allowed to criticize Israel, correct?
Nation which, quotes, gives bigotry no sanction and persecution no assistance. It helped lay the groundwork for religious freedom in the First Amendment in our Constitution. And ever since, Jews have been in the forefront of helping realize the promise of America for all Americans. Jewish artists, poets help define the American vision of liberty for millions of people who come to our shores.
You guys see what he's doing? What does this have to do with the fact that Israel is committing a genocide? And you are criticizing the International Criminal Court in the process of international law to protect a genocidal state. You guys see how he is tying Jewish culture, which I have no criticism of, who I have no disdain towards, but he's tying Jewish culture to our support to the international rules, the international, I want to say rules-based war, that's not the term you want to use. So he's tying our Jewish culture to whether we support the International Criminal Court holding Israel accountable. So he's directly tying the actions of the Israeli state to Jewish people, which is the height of anti-Semitism. If you agree with the global majority that Israel is committing genocide, you are now an enemy of Jewish culture?
Look, Jewish suffragettes and advocates have fought for women's rights, voting rights, every right we have. My whole career.
They fought for every right we have now, guys. We got to support Israel committing a genocide because according to liberals, Zionist Jews fought for every right that we have. Bro, we don't fight this shit, bro. History is going to be completely fucked in 200 years. You guys know history is written by the winners. This shit's going to be fact. The bus sit-ins, the Black Panthers, you know they want to get rid of the militant wing of the civil rights movement, the armed resistance wing of the civil rights movement. That shit's going to be gone. They're going to be teaching the history books, the Ron DeSantis, white America approved history books. They're going to be talking about how Black Americans actually had it good the entire time during Jim Crow. And you have Zionist Jews that came out of nowhere and granted us liberation. That's going to be the truth here very soon. Let's continue.
Poets help define the American vision of liberty for millions of people who come to our shores. And look, Jewish suffragettes and advocates have fought for women's rights, voting rights, every right we have. My whole career, every fight to increase civil rights and civil liberties has been led by Jewish community, where I come from. The Jewish faith leaders and citizens marched, petitioned, boarded a bus, demanded civil rights for all. Jewish scientists and engineers and doctors have led breakthroughs in innovation, technology, and medicine. Across government, Jewish Americans have proudly served our nation in uniform and elected at point of office in embassies and civil service and our nation's highest courts. That's why Jill and I hosted the first ever high holiday reception at the White House. That's important. First ever permanent White House menorah made from the original wood of the White House building. To make clear that the history and vibrancy of the Jewish life is woven into the very fabric of America, and it's permanent. It's permanent. But look, I know today's reception falls on hard times. The trauma of October 7th and its aftermath of the deadliest day the Jewish people have undergone since the Holocaust is still fresh and ongoing.
Doesn't give them the right to commit a genocide. There is no exception in international law for revenge. So this is the part of the speech and where he openly advocates for Jewish supremacy. And Lionel Massey, I'm gonna introduce you here very soon, my friend. Thank you for joining us here. But this is where Biden openly advocates for the idea of Jewish supremacy, where Israel does not have to follow international law because they're a God-chosen people. The concept of international law does not exist for Joe Biden in Israel.
And with many of you, we have parents of someone being held hostage right now, and we're going to get them home. We're going to get them home, come hell or high water. 1,200 innocent people slaughtered in their kibbutz, massacred at a music festival, brutally raped, mutilated, sexually assaulted.
Since we are guests, I'm gonna just send to the part I'm waiting for. You know, our friends and our brothers and sisters at Hotspot, they always provide. So I'm gonna skip to the part where he denies the genocide, and then I introduce our guest here.
Let me be clear. We reject the ICC's application for arrest warrants against Israeli leaders.
Yay, we deny
Whoever these words may
genocide.
imply, there is no equivalence between Israel and Hamas. And it's clear Israel wants to do all it can to ensure civilian protection. But let me be clear. Contrary to allegations against Israel made by the International Court of Justice, what's happening is not genocide. We reject that. We will always stand with Israel and the threats against its security. Compounding the pain and a vicious surge of anti-Semitism around the world, here in America as well. Let me be clear.
So you have Democrats happily cheering for genocide denial now. And I'm interested in hearing from our guest here, who is an amazing investigative reporter who worked for the Gray Zone. We had you on RBN before. It's always great to be in a conversation with you. And you have done fantastic work, man. We cover all your videos exposing the White House. We have another one we will cover here very soon, where you expose the Biden White House for their lies about sending weapons to Israel. So welcome to RBN once again, Lion Cosgrove.
Yeah, good to see you again, Nick. I'm sorry, I'm here in New York actually, so I'm out in the park, so I hope you guys can hear me all right. But yeah, I caught the end of that clip of Biden, and it's kind of wild that you have people like Ben Shapiro saying Hamas is in charge of the White House and stuff like that. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
how could you ask for a better ally than Biden right now? You know,
That show how ridiculous anyone is who actually try to appease Israel, because despite everything Biden has done, they still say that he's doing the bidding of Hamas, despite the fact that the ICC put a lot of bogus charges against Hamas, ones that was debunked, like the rape whole story that the Gray Zone exposed. They gave them so many nuggets regarding going after Hamas, and they still complaining. And you hear in the speech they're complaining about the false equivalency of Hamas. And I want to get your general thoughts as I'm gonna pull your video up. We call out the Biden White House, and you can speak on that as well if you want to. But I want to get your general reaction to the ICC ruling, because guys, I do think it's a good thing. I'm just critical of some things that the ICC say. So, do you agree? Do you disagree? What's your thoughts in general?
So how recent is that? You're going to have to put me up to speed. I actually haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, no worries. I can give the International Criminal Court of Justice. They are seeking an arrest warrant on Benjamin Netanyahu.
That
and,
I knew.
And the defense minister. They also have charges on the Hamas leaders for October 7th. And once again, guys, if there's any soldiers who committed war crimes, I'm for that. You know what I mean? I just disagree with assertion that it was a systemic plan for Hamas to engage in mass atrocities. But anyway, Lyle, are you familiar with that case? If not, I also want you to speak on Biden's handling of Gaza and the weapon shipments. You can say however you want. I appreciate your.
Yeah, no, I'm not super familiar with the specific ICC case. I know they did want to summon him for crimes against humanity, which I think, based on that phrase alone, is totally justified, based on what's going on in Gaza. But yeah, I'm not super, privy to it. I think Biden's rhetoric there says a lot, though. Just we completely condemn, the ICC for doing that. I mean, it's really absurd, after we endured a year and a half of moral lectures about the war in Ukraine and how we have to stand against Russia or else we're all Neville Chamberlain. You have a war that is much hotter, killing many more civilians at a much faster rate. And yet the Biden administration is doing everything it can to provide cover for the Israelis. But yeah, this clip here is me at the Pentagon Thursday, asking about, so there was the recent CNN interview where Biden basically said, if they go into Rafah, I made it very clear to Netanyahu, and he was talking tough with CNN. I made it very clear we're not going to give them weapons that are used, offensively in cities. And so this is me challenging the Pentagon on that statement, because we're, just days after he said that to CNN, we're already sending $700 million in more tank munitions. And the idea that Israel has not used tanks to go into cities in Gaza is just silly. So you see her get a little heated at me here.
Yeah, I'm going to play the clip. And I'm glad that you brought this up, because I covered like this theater the Biden administration been playing, where they say, oh, we have a red line until you go into Rafah, while ignoring the fact that they provided all the weapons they needed to go into Rafah. But anyway, let's watch it because this is glorious. I'll play it in full, and then I want you to add any thoughts you have as well if after the clip.
Yeah, over here.
Thanks, Sabrina. So last week to CNN, President Biden said that he made it clear that if the Israeli government goes into Rafah, I will not be supplying weapons that have been used historically to deal with cities. Of course, we've seen the Israelis use tanks in urban centers throughout this war, and in the latest arms package, which is now on its way, expected to be approved, and was after Biden issued that statement, is $700 million in tank ammunition. So this statement appears to be false. Is it the Pentagon's assessment that tanks will not be used in the invasion of Rafah?
I think you're significantly oversimplifying things. So what I would tell you to do is to do a little homework on the package that was approved, and that this is long-term sales that will be going to Israel, and the State Department would have more for you on that. In terms of operating within an urban area, the secretary, the president have been very clear that these type of high payload bombs, the 2,000-pound bombs, it's not necessary to be used in an urban area like Rafah. We are still, and I want to be very clear, we are still providing Israel the means to defend itself against its fight against Hamas. And you are still seeing shipments of weapon systems going to Israel, and will continue to go through. That is a commitment this president has made. But when it comes to that one shipment is paused.
Okay, but in the shipment that is not paused is $700 million in tank munitions. And are you saying that, I can read you the Biden quote again, I just read it to you.
You don't have to.
Okay, but he said,
I made it clear that if they go into
I'm gonna just pause here because I love how that smug, condescending shit live was trying to lecture you about not doing your homework. Meanwhile, you had quotes, and she's like, "No, don't read the quotes." Anyway, I'll play here and I'll pass it right to you.
Rafah.
Yeah, and here's the quote.
Yet. If they go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with Rafah, to deal with the cities, to deal with that problem.
we're not going to supply weapons that have been
You don't
historically
have to read it to me. I would
historically
direct you
used in
to-
cities. So are you saying tanks haven't been used in cities in Gaza?
I would direct you to the State Department for more on the sales. That has to do with sales to Israel. I just don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
Smacked her smug ass down. Anyway, you want any comments you want to add to that? Well done. I immediately got triggered when she was trying to be so condescending to you, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a common strategy is they just act like you're way out of line. So like if you're kind of like, self-conscious, you might be like, oh shit, do I have all my facts right? She kind of referred to that, I guess the most recent package is a State Department approved package, and the Pentagon, which is why the contents are known, because the Pentagon actually doesn't usually make the contents of its packages public. So that was one thing I could have asked also is, okay, regardless of the State Department, are you promising that the Pentagon is no longer sending tank munitions? And the real point of the question is that they did pause that one type of bomb. They paused the 2,000-pound bombs and the 5,000-pound bombs. And so they basically did that to signal to progressives. And like you said, they're kind of acting tough, like, oh, we have a red line about Rafah. Biden's trying to signal to progressive voters, like, look, I really am, trying to play hardball with Netanyahu here, and we're pausing these big bombs. But it's a totally misleading it's actually a completely false statement when he says we're not providing weapons that have been used to deal with cities, because the Israelis have used tanks in cities for this whole war. So, it's just kind of a sleight of hand where they can like trick some of the stupider left-wing voters and say, well, at least we're not giving them these bombs, but they can also appease Israel by continuing to give them, billions in weapons. So it's important to realize this, especially for progressive voters, what the Biden administration is actually doing, which it is not faltering, and it has yet to falter in its support for Israel since the start of the war.
Something I've been reporting a lot on, and there's a reason why the Biden administration has to deny genocide. And there's a reason why it's very important to focus on these weapon shipments, because the United States is in direct violation of Leahy's law. And I always say this as they implement harsh authoritarian law and order for the working class of this country. We have a ruling class that's essentially lawless. So as they have Israel as invading refugee camps, bombing hospitals, they are doing it with our bombs, which is another reason why it's completely absurd for Israel, Zionists, and ICC for them to complain about ICC when they didn't put Biden and Blinken and charge them for crimes for enabling this by selling them weapons. And another thing I want to ask you about in general is the military industrial complex, especially like the Republicans and the GOP. They've been pretty crazy recently. Like we're seeing full-fledged United States of Israel shit here. You have like in direct violation of all our laws, the international laws, the Genocide Convention. You have the House that passed a bill that will force Biden to continue weapons to Israel. You had the GOP who even they had a proposal that would have defunded the military effectively if they didn't send weapons shipments to Israel, which obviously the Zionist Democrats are more than happy to accommodate. This be the last thing I'm reading. I'll pass to you for any thoughts. And I saw this today. Once again, our brothers and sisters at Hotspot, they provide. They saw this, and this is crazy. Republicans introduced a bill that will give the IDF the same benefits as a U.S. citizen serving in the U.S. military. So no longer enough for the IDF just to train with the police. They now have these contracts where the IDF will get benefits that military members get. They will have right to travel to the United States. What's your general thoughts about this?
Well, so I hadn't seen that. I actually just took a screenshot of it on my phone because I'm going to follow up and see who submitted that bill, and definitely going to try to find them on the Hill and ask them about it, because that is just really wild. Yeah. That's kind of next level. I mean, I've been disappointed in Republicans throughout this whole time, but that's really next level stuff. Yeah, I mean, Republicans, some of them were good on Ukraine. Some of them in private are good on Israel. I mean, I've had private conversations with a lot of kind of the MAGA staffers who are really sick of, giving so much money to Israel, although the candidates are afraid to say it because of all their evangelical voters. And I've heard that verbatim, that, that there are Republican candidates who are just afraid of their evangelical voter base. So they won't come out and say what they think.
In my thought, I want to get your thoughts on this as well. And this should concern a lot of these Republican voters, because I think they can influence those evangelicals. I think they're not so much afraid of the voters. It's AIPAC. Like, if there's any Republican that
there's a lot of that. There's for sure a lot of AIPAC Republicans. I'm talking more about kind of the MAGA Republicans who don't get
that's fair.
AIPAC, and if anything, AIPAC hates them, but they're still afraid of their evangelical voter base. And I don't know if you saw, related to the ICC ruling as well, Brian Mast, who's the former IDF soldier, dual Israeli citizen who's in Congress.
Oh yeah.
Tweeted out something like, hey ICC, if you go after our allies, you're going to find out what happens to you, or something. So he just issued this weird, vague threat to the ICC, as if
is this him, Brian Mast? This boy, he sends the craziest and also the funniest tweets you'll find on X.
Yeah, no, he's really psychotic. And I there's actually a video at the Gray Zone not too long ago where I went up to him and I asked him, do you think from the river to the sea Palestine will be free? Do you think that's a call to genocide? And he goes, well, yeah, no, it's definitely a call to genocide. And then I asked him, I said, okay, then when Netanyahu says from the river to the sea there will only be Israeli sovereignty, was that a call to genocide? He's like, no, it's just kind of a factual statement. And then he closed the interview by saying, like, how about this? He's like, from the river to the sea, Palestine will never be. So he just
I've seen that, actually. I know exactly what you're talking about. Okay,
yeah, no. So he calls something a call to genocide. He blatantly just says the exact same thing and just has no self-awareness, apparently. He's a really psychotic dude. I mean, honestly, when you talk to him, he looks like he's also kind of medicated up. Like, he's really not 100% there. And
they live a comfortable life, but I truly do. They live a comfortable life, but I truly believe that selling out this aggressively, it does something to your soul, man. Like, you can be comfortable all you want, but it does something to you. Go ahead.
No, for sure, exactly. And he kind of has that vibe where you're talking to him and you're like, this guy is like, this guy's just kind of evil. Like, that's kind of the vibe I got when I talk to him, to be completely honest. And it's just wild. It's just wild people like that serving Congress. It really is.
And this is unrelated to my topic, but I brought this up because you mentioned it when I came after him and damn near ratio to pretty much a ratio today. He said, this is what he said, just to let you guys know the craziness of Brian Mast. He said it was revealed that the Chinese Communist Party is funding the anti-Semitic protest we've seen spring up across college campuses. The CCP is allying with pro-Hamas sympathizers to undermine our country. Like, this is kind of shit you get from these anti-China hawk Republicans. I just simply said anti-China hawks are the dumbest people in political discourse and got a nice grand off of that. Yeah, we can get back on topic unless you have anything you want to add.
It's sorry. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay, I got a call and it kind of interrupted it. Yeah, I mean, that's like, you hear that about Soros too, and you hear that, and like Soros, I mean, Soros does fund, district attorneys and things like that. But it's like anytime there's like some like super tenuous chain of funding that like, some New York Post reporter strings together, as if these college students aren't just organically angry about, kids being buried under rubble every day. It's like, oh no, it's actually China just fooling them into caring about genocide. It's just so, it's really like paranoid and weird, and it's as crazy as kind of the Trump. It's like the Trump Russia stuff, but on the right now. And any hate for Israel couldn't possibly be organic. It's got to come from China or George Soros, who I think is Zionist. But yeah, no, it's stuff like that.
They have different wings of the empire, and they have to manage them. So to get Republicans to support war is pretty easily in general. They got them to support the war against China, viewing China as hostile. They can get them to support Israeli wars by simply calling anyone who opposes Israel or any Arab Muslim a terrorist. And you just say that, they all on board. You know what I mean? It's very easy to get them convinced. With liberals, you got to do different stuff. Like, they learned that the elections.
Hitler. Yeah,
Hitler. Feel free to interrupt anytime. This is a fun conversation. But they also will put stuff like Russiagate, the elections. So now, I don't know if you've seen these stories about when they're saying that in the upcoming election, China wants to get involved. Iran want to get involved. Russia want to meddle in our election again. That's how they get the liberal wing of the empire on board with their wars. So they always get different strategies. Feel free if you want to chime in before you move on.
No, I mean, I thought you made a good point on kind of like Republicans. You bring up Muslims and you bring up terrorists, and Republicans get all up in arms. And I kind of naively thought before October 7th, when I was seeing a lot of the populist Republicans support me and my kind of questioning of the Ukraine narrative, I was like, oh, okay, it looks like a lot of Republicans have kind of evolved from this stupid mindset of like Muslims or terrorists, evolved from the Bush days. And I was just super disappointed to see everybody snap back. I think there is like a solid base of people who have moved past it. I think Tucker Carlson is slowly getting there. He hasn't been like great on, I know he is good on Israel. He's just kind of been like kind of timid about how he talks about it, but he did just have Dave Smith on, who's the big libertarian, who's like one of the, strongest anti-Israel voices out there. So
Tucker is the one person who surprises me. Everyone else doesn't surprise me. I'm surprised that Tucker is actually like talking about Israel. When Tucker first started his anti-empire thing, I'm like, oh, they're just a fucking grip. And I have no trust in this guy, but he has been consistent. Like, he's not great on China, but he questioned why we should hate China. You know what I mean? So I was surprised that he'd been consistent. Everyone else showing their true colors wasn't surprising to me, but I could see why people thought they was legit. I could see why people thought that, but a lot of it was them trying to own the libs because the liberals support Ukraine. And that was kind of obvious to me. Anything else you want to add? Feel free.
Yeah, I mean, Tucker, I don't know too much about his China opinion, but I know for a fact he wouldn't support the U.S. going to war over Taiwan and doesn't support all of our, South China Sea meddling. But yeah, it's a shame. Yeah, they were good on Ukraine. I think you're right. It was a lot of kind of reactionary politics against the left, who were just so pro-Zelensky that people felt the need to take the other side. I do think there's a strong, not only Tucker, but Tucker's obviously one of the most influential. So there is a strong base that actually have changed, that actually are less interventionist. They're finally sick of like the forever wars. There are people like that. There's been a lot of disappointments though. I mean, like guys like Chip Roy, guys like, Thomas Massie, I guess, has been good. I'm trying to think of some like Ron Johnson, Mike Lee, These are guys who are really good on Ukraine, and those are guys who probably, maybe are getting some AIPAC money. But it's a shame, and I wish we could get some bipartisan coalition. Someone to stand with Rashida Tlaib and those squad members who are actually brave on this issue.
We are living in the strangest of times, and people are having a hard time adjusting to it and dealing with it. I don't believe that the institutions of the right have changed, but I do believe that there was a shift among the populace in the right. And this is the same with the left and the Democratic Party, because there's an overall trend of the duopoly bleeding support. So the same way you have a lot of progressives who became more radicalized, a lot of people are calling themselves communists now, a lot of these people left the Democratic Party. We're seeing the same thing with the Republicans on another scale, where there are people who are still conservative in principle, but they're done with the duopoly. And they may not say it the same way we say it. They may not use the same terms that we say. But when they come out against their wars, when you see these right-wingers who criticizing Israel, that's a part of them leaving the duopoly. And they will never. And these same people, they're going through some shit too, because they seeing them agree with me. Like a lot of these people who on the right who hate the duopoly, who done with the Republican establishment, they see me, an unapologetic communist, a black communist revolutionary, and they're like, why am I agreeing with this? I thought I hate communism. So you guys see this big shift going on, and it's confusing the hell out of everybody, because a lot of these right wingers who left the Republican Party, it is my personal opinion that they have no reason to call themselves on the right anymore, because you guys know how I define left versus right. But I know you want to chime in. Feel free if you want to chime in. I'll tell you I'm mute.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, there is kind of that coalition. Like I'm traditionally libertarian, and I feel, I'm at the gray zone and Max Blumenthal and I have really never talked about our economic views at all, because we agree so strongly that the most important and pressing issue right now is the war machine, which is not only kills, millions of people, but now it's pushing up against other nuclear powers like China and Russia, which is just insanity that we would even be testing things like that. Yeah. I mean, it's just so crazy. The fear of nuclear weapons just doesn't exist like it did in the 60s and 70s, and we kind of need that healthy fear, because I've been in the Pentagon many times, and I go to that was at the Pentagon, that video we just played. You kind of get the sense people are on autopilot. Like people, they go there, it's their day job. Like there's people sitting around eating lunch, talking about the weather and things like that. And it's kind of the banality of evil, where these people forget that they're kind of like on board the Death Star, and like everyone's kind of working towards more destruction and potentially like unimaginable levels of destruction. So people need to wake up to this. I try to do that in those briefing rooms. On Israel, I will say some of the reporters, like there's an Al Jazeera reporter in there. And a lot of the reporters have been good on Israel. Nobody was good on Ukraine, but some of the reporters have asked good questions on Israel. So if people check out those briefings, they'll see a lot of reporters pushing back, because I mean, it's just so egregious, and it's so kind of obvious, even to those with low IQ, that what's going on in Gaza is just objectively evil.
Yeah, and we're gonna have another example of the Biden administration being grilled over their insane genocide denial, rebellion of international law. Just one more thought on the last topic. This is why I'm for coalition. I'm for solving issues in terms of coalitions, and there's like this faction of what I call Twitter communists, who I think they are designed to make us look bad. Who they legitimately don't believe in that. Like a lot of people support the Ukraine war, but they didn't want to organize with libertarians who was against the Ukraine war out of principle. I think because we're fighting an empire the likes we never seen before, an establishment the likes we ever seen before, I am full support of coalition building with people who support me on ideas that is pressing. Meaning I am for organizing with libertarians to challenge the police state, challenging the military-industrial complex. And then when it comes to economic issues, our coalitions will fight on that. That's why I legitimately believe. I think that's the best way forward, because I am someone who likes talking about labels. I think it's interesting to talk about what words mean. I think it's interesting to see where you fall on the political. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's just interesting as a nerd. But even though I find it interesting, I'm not obsessed over it. You know what I mean? If you call yourself a libertarian, we agree on war. All right, that's interesting. Let's work together to get it done. Any last thoughts on that? And we can move on.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's like we've got a war machine we've never seen the likes of before, and it's like, why would you not come together to oppose that? You know?
Yeah, let's play this clip. We're gonna play. What I have scheduled is this clip here, and I'm gonna play a little bit of Netanyahu's reaction of the ICC charge. He had an interview. Doesn't matter what the fucking name is, some MSNBC drone. So I'm gonna just play a little bit of that. We react to that, and we can begin to wrap up. I appreciate your time. So let's listen to this. So this Biden administration taking L after L. One of the things they're saying, which is absurd, is they say the ICC doesn't have jurisdiction over Israel. Now, let's ignore, they completely ignore that fact about Russia, because Russia's not part of ICC, but it's in the ICC's mandate that if there's no plausible sign of a country, even if they outside ICC bound, that they plan to implement international law and police themselves, then they fall into jurisdiction of the ICC. Now, this explanation was how the Biden administration was able to support the ICC charge against Russia. Because they're like, oh, well, Russia's never going to change anyway. Now, we had Netanyahu and Israeli officials that outright saying it doesn't matter what the ICC says, we're going to do whatever the fuck we want. No matter what people say, we're going to do whatever the fuck we want. That alone puts what they were doing in the ICC. Anyway, let's play. I need to shut up. Let's play this clip and you can respond.
Focus on jurisdiction for a second. Who does have jurisdiction here?
So the government of Israel has jurisdiction
Over the occupied territory.
We have jurisdiction
Over Gaza, which is not entirely
They
occupied.
have jurisdiction into looking at the actions
Okay,
by their
so
military
the
personnel.
Palestinians, if they have a complaint, they have to bring it to Israeli courts.
We have jurisdiction. We
You have
with the
jurisdiction?
use of our equipment.
I'm sorry. How do you have
with the
jurisdiction?
use of our military equipment
Matt,
that we have provided?
How do you have jurisdiction?
If you look at the Leahy law, if you look at
No, that's not jurisdiction in a criminal.
In the Leahy's law, you're in violation of. What are you talking about?
Yeah, that's wild. He just referenced that. I mean, I'm going to bring that up next time I'm there. He just validated the Leahy law.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna be interested if that video is made public, if you're able to call them out on that. That was insane. But you got to see how the Biden administration in the Zionist project, they're in shambles to the point where they're just making shit up. And anyone who knows international law, they can easily call them out on this. They just relying on being in bubbles and
yeah. What's he saying? He's being asked who has jurisdiction over Gaza, and at first he says Israel, and then he says the U.S. That is kind of just a weird answer. It's like, if we have jurisdiction, then why aren't we doing anything about it? Like, what? Because they all the time they say, well, this is Israel's war. We wouldn't, tell them what to do. Now he's saying we have jurisdiction, apparently.
Yeah. I'll let it finish, and then you can share your thoughts after you see the whole video as well. Let's go back.
Jurisdiction, and we
You have
with the
jurisdiction?
use of our equipment.
I'm sorry. How do you have
with the
jurisdiction?
use of our military equipment
Matt,
that we have provided?
How do you have jurisdiction?
If you look at the Leahy law, if you look at
that's not jurisdiction in a criminal process. That's
not in the criminal
jurisdiction
process, but it has to do with the determinations that we make and the policies that flow
but
from
that's
it.
not
So, but Matt, long term, you were right that we want to see.
You used to work for DOJ, Matt.
You were
Come on.
you-
There's
it
no
is-
U.S.
it
does
is
not
not-
have jurisdiction.
There are
here.
different. I wasn't referring to criminal jurisdiction, Matt. There are different ways to look at this. Long term, we agree with you that the Palestinian people should be a state that has have the ability to make these determinations. But that's not where we are today. That's where we're trying to get to.
You see, there's nothing but pure panic at that point. Like, he just saying stuff to fill time at this point. Anything you want to add to this, and then I'm gonna show the Netanyahu reaction to the ICC as we wrap up. Anything else you want to add to this segment and reactions to that video? I think a lot of it speaks for itself. You just see the bumbling fools in the Biden administration who realize they're so wrong. They're just gonna use might makes right. They know they're wrong, so like, what are you gonna do about it? Man, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean that was just kind of, he was bumbling a lot. The reporter questioning him is Matt Lee. He's with the Associated Press, and he's one of the last good reporters with the Associated Press, and they call on him for whatever reason. There's this kind of deal in the briefing rooms where they must call on Associated Press first, and so he's kind of carved out this position where he's the State Department veteran, and he's actually asking good questions. So when you tune into those, be sure to give Matt Lee some love. He's on Twitter at AP Diplo Writer, and he's actually
incredible.
A good reporter.
We featured his work quite a bit on RBN.
Yeah.
He's incredible. I got to know him a lot over the last 2 years. People watch RBN countless times. I covered this guy destroy. He's a legend. Now we almost done here. I'm going to play a little bit what Netanyahu was saying, because on our last episode yesterday, I'll show you guys the ironclad arguments that South Africa was making. Like, they're taking this whole thing seriously. And the contrast is so incredible, which is why Israel is losing world support. You see South Africa and all these people who have the charge against Israel have all these documentation, all this rock solid logic. Meanwhile, in Israel, they said, oh, you guys must be sympathetic to Hamas. You guys must hate Jews. And when I saw this clip from Netanyahu, it was like, they're not even trying. Like, you really think you're being persuasive here? But I'll let it play. This is the only reason I'm playing this. We play this and I'll get your response.
Host of the 11th Hour, Stephanie Ruhle, spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and she asked him to respond to those arrest warrants. Take a listen.
My response is no different from President Biden, who said this is outrageous. And many people across the political spectrum in the United States and leaders of democratic countries around the world have called it exactly that. It's a rogue prosecutor who's out to demonize the one and only Jewish state. And he's doing that by first applying a false...
You see the lazy arguments they use? No legal arguments. They only doing this because they hate the Jews. They're not taking it seriously. I'll let it continue, and I'll pass to you, Liam.
Symmetry is equating Israel's democratically elected leaders with the terrorist tyrants of Hamas. That's like saying, well, I'm issuing arrest warrants for, after 9/11, I'm issuing arrest warrants for George Bush, but also for Osama bin Laden. And in
Bro, when they make this argument, it's not the banger they think it is, bro.
Yeah, if only they had done that.
They say this all the time, Liam. Well, they say, man, do you know what you guys did when 9/11 happened? You guys went to Afghanistan and murdered all these innocent civilians, and you guys didn't get charged with war crimes. I'm like,
yeah, like, can't we do it too? Yeah, no, it's so crazy. But yeah, they're on to something there. It's like, yeah, you are on to something. There were war crimes committed by George Bush and Barack Obama. Nice.
Yep. It's not the banger argument they think it is. I'll let it finish, and I'll let you chime in your thoughts. It's not too long. Netanyahu. We're not gonna listen to none of their analysis. I'm just playing it so you guys see what Netanyahu said.
World War II, I'm issuing arrest warrants for FDR, but also for Hitler. Thanks a lot. That's a false symmetry, and it's totally absurd. It's a travesty of justice. But the other thing he's doing, he's using also, Stephanie, just this point, he's using also false accusations. He's saying we're drying out Gaza. Drying out Gaza? We're supplying now, before the war, 7% of Gaza's water, now 45% of the water, nearly half, to make sure they have water. He's saying that we have a deliberate policy of starvation. Deliberate policy? We supplied 500,000 tons of food and drugs, 20,000 trucks.
Yes,
We're fixing the road
hold
beds
on.
so those trucks can go in.
But we've already heard U.S. aid has said famine is present. We've heard from Cindy McCain, who runs the World Food Program, who has said there's massive famine there. Are you saying that they're lying?
Do you imagine how much you fucked up when Zionist-controlled MSNBC has to put back on you just because how bad it will make them look if they didn't? But don't praise MSNBC too much, because contrast how they are treating him with how they would treat even third-party candidates I don't like RFK Jr., how they would treat Dr. Cornel West, how they would treat Dr. Jill Stein, who can't get a word out before interruptions. So even though she chimed in, you guys see how much bullshit they allowed him to spew before she sir, if you mind, sir, I would please just like to mention, sir, that you're full of shit.
That's actually a great point. You know, how they treat Trump when he's on, or RFK, versus how they're treating Netanyahu, who's in the process of just kind of ethnic cleansing Gaza, is is kind of night and day. That is kind of wild. I mean, she's giving a little pushback, so yeah, good for her. I mean, it's surprising to see from MSNBC. And it's also interesting when Netanyahu there said, we used to supply 7% of the water. Now we provide 43%. I mean, if that's true, what that really shows is, I mean, assuming they haven't increased the amount of water, which they probably haven't. In fact, they cut off water in the beginning. That really just shows how much less water is getting into Gaza. I just did a little quick math. That would mean Gaza is getting about 20% of the water that it was before the war started. So, I mean, that just shows how desperate the people there are. So and also, of course, he forgets to mention all the Israeli citizens who are standing by the checkpoints and not letting aid go through. So yeah, and the fact that we had to build this temporary pier because Israel wouldn't let us just drive it through Israel. Not surprising a politician is lying.
Yeah, and there's a ton of evidence that the IDF was protecting these Israeli settlers who was blocking aid. And now that goes to the theoretical question that people in the resistance, like Hamas and them, asked when they say, "What's really the definition of an innocent Israeli?" When all of them are forced to join the IDF, and once you're part of the IDF, you're IDF for life. Which is why you see settler colonialists block aid, because that's them engaging in their long-term duty to the IDF and the settler colonial project. So it's just a question: what does it really mean to be a civilian settler colonialist? Anyway, let's continue. Feel free to chime in. I think I saw you on mute.
Yeah,
You
I mean, I will. Yeah, I mean, I'll say that like they are forced to join the IDF. I mean, a lot of I know a lot of the Israelis do support what's going on. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, I think that's like it's kind of the same logic the IDF is applying to Gaza. It's like, well, some of them voted for Hamas, like back in 2008 or whatever, and that's like their justification for there's no innocent Palestinians, which I think is crazy and only leads to more violence. It's the whole collective punishment argument. So I know there are plenty of Israelis. In fact, there's those Hasidic communities who are anti-Zionist and who were protesting, and the IDF was like throwing them to the ground in the streets. And those are to be honest probably the more devout practicing Jews who actually read the Torah, and they have those hats and the curly hair and all that stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't I wouldn't totally adopt that logic of
it's uncomfortable,
like
isn't
October
it?
7th was justified, because I think it only leads to more and more of what we're seeing now. But yeah, no, it is. I mean, you do have a state where, based on polling, based on a lot of American Zionists who I know, they really support some radical shit. They really support genocide, and it's like it's awful to see.
And I don't disagree with you saying, because I understand why you say that morally. I understand why people say that morally. It's a legit position to take. But if you are a settler colonialist and you accept the house that was stolen from a Palestinian, because a lot of these settlers who live close to the border, they set these houses.
Are you? Yeah, I mean, if you steal somebody's house and you start living in it, I mean, you're a trespasser. That's a different story.
Yeah, so we agree on that. So, but if those people was killed, they would say they were innocent civilian that was killed. I just don't personally agree with that. But what you say, you make a lot of valid points. You're morally clear, and I understand why people had that position. But the settler colonialists,
I hear you on settlers. Yeah, I mean, I've seen those videos where they just kick a poor woman out of her house. She's filming and crying, and she just kind of, they didn't even do it really by force. They just kind of it was kind of with the vague threat of that the IDF is backing this guy, and that guy literally stole her house. That guy kicked a woman out of her home. I mean, in the U.S., that's fair grounds morally to take up arms against that person who is stealing from you. So yeah, no, that's a different story, and that is justified.
Yeah, and these Israelis, they would say stuff like, "Well, if I didn't steal it, someone else would anyway." Nah, don't care. But there is one.
Yeah, that's the video. I saw that same video. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, and I am intellectually mature enough to understand that there's a grade area here. There's ideas to be debated here, but it's something, and the idea that I mentioned before is not accepted in the mainstream. I think it's a legit conversation to be had where that line stops in being a civilian versus being an active participant in settler colonialism. Because I am like, if the resistance was to go after someone who was in opposition of the Israeli state, that's a bad move, and I wouldn't support it. But there's a gray zone here. But anyway, let's move on. You guys gonna see his response to this very mild pushback. And this pushback she gives is because of her viewer base. Like, remember, Democrats watch MSNBC, but Democrats are turning against them. Now, a lot of people who watch this are Zionists, but the Israeli state and Benjamin Netanyahu is so unpopular, they have to say something. What Netanyahu says is so unhinged and so factually wrong. She has to say something. But as you see the pushback, I just want you guys to compare how that pushback would be compared to if it was Joe Stein, Dr. West, if RFK was there. Just keep that in mind. Let's finish the clip and we can begin the wrap-up line.
He's saying that we have a deliberate policy of starvation. deliberate policy. We supplied 500,000 tons of food and drugs, 20,000 trucks.
Yes,
We're
sir,
fixing the
but hold
roadbeds
on.
so
But,
those
sir,
trucks can go in.
But we've already heard U.S. aid has said famine is present. We've heard from Cindy McCain, who runs the World Food Program, who has said there's massive famine there. Are you saying that they're lying?
I'm saying that Cindy McCain, unfortunately, is misinformed, and I'm saying that the facts prove otherwise. We flooded Gaza with humanitarian aid, but before that, we supplied it with more than minimal amounts, and we fixed the roadbeds, we fixed the border crossings to make sure that all this food and all these supplies go in. We've enabled airdrops. We've enabled maritime routes. We're building a port. The whole thing of a deliberate starvation policy is ridiculous, and it's put forward by a guy who doesn't check his facts. He's receiving it, as do others, from the UNRWA and other anti-Israeli agencies and from Palestinian sources. Look, they said just recently that they discovered that, well, they sort of were misinformed, that 10,000 casualties that were supposed to be women and children. Now they say, well, we don't know that. I mean,
But, sir,
so they're
we
fixing
can't-
it. You
we
know, it
can't
takes time for the
discount.
truth to come up.
No, Netanyahu is such an evil ghoul, bro. They are actually pushing back on him. That's how far gone he is. And that's why I think it's important to show this, because I want you guys to see the face of evil. Like, this is pure demonic shit here, to the point where someone who has no moral barometer, don't get it wrong, this Empire puppet host here, she got this interview for a reason. But because she knows what sounds good for the Empire, she knows, like, bro, you're fucking this up for me and everybody because you're so crazy. That's my interpretation. I'll let it finish and I'll give you your last thoughts on it and then we can wrap up.
But,
I go back a few
All right,
seconds.
and
We can't
it takes time for the
discount.
truth to come out.
all right,
Okay.
and Stephanie Rule joins us now to tell us more about the interview. It's a tough one, Stephanie.
Yep, it indeed was a tough one. So what's your final thoughts? And it can be very vague. It can be on the topic in general, because we about to wrap up here very soon anyway. So it can be vague.
Yeah, I
What's
just
your
think
thoughts?
on that last segment of Netanyahu, I just think it's interesting. You actually see this a lot if you talk to a lot of Zionists, how he's basically listing this kind of laundry list. Hey, we provided food and drugs. We opened the checkpoints. He's just kind of like naming these things that are ambiguous and also, are some of them like not even super relevant. Like, we opened the checkpoints. Okay, well, good for you. I mean, why did you close them in the first place? But and then you just look at kind of the reality of the situation in Gaza, where people are starving and buildings are like, half the neighborhoods. I think like what was the UN statistic that 75% of neighborhoods have been destroyed? Something just wild like that. Those are people's homes that they can't go back to. So he just kind of makes this list of like, wow, look at all these things we're doing because we're so humanitarian and we actually care about the children there. While the reality on the ground, with anybody who has like social media and can see the videos, realizes that he's annihilating this population. So he just has this kind of like perverse like mindset where he's claiming, oh, we care so much about them, we're so moral, look at all we're doing for them, while he's killing them. It's just really, that, like what you said about evil is spot on, because it's like, not only is he killing them, but he's also lecturing us on how moral he is while he's doing it.
Yeah, always great to have you on. Always great conversation. Any last chance to promote any of your work? Make sure you guys follow Liam Cosgrove. Follow the Gray Zone, who I have a lot of respect for the work Gray Zone does, RBN does. So I love the investigative reporting.
Thank you,
Nick. So go ahead.
Always good to be on, man. Yeah, that's my Twitter. You got pulled up there, and my handle is Cosgrove_IV. It's always fun to be on, man. You do good work, and I appreciate it, man. Happy to come back on anytime.
Yeah, absolutely. And we definitely will be reaching out again. Always great to have you on. I'll pop you in the back. I told you, we got banger after banger come out this week. I've been busy as hell, bro. So I want to take tomorrow off. We have the Sabby and JB show on Thursday as well. I need to look at the calendar. We got a lot of stuff lined up here in the next few weeks, but make sure you guys subscribe. Also, my Telegram. Oh shit, my hotspot video about to come out. My editor just sent me it. Shit, I gotta send. I gotta approve this video. So damn. So the hotspot video about to come out here very soon. Also, I'm on Telegram. Trying to build that from scratch. We need an alternative from YouTube. Oh shit! Thank you, Zoya. Zoya's love, Zoya's life. So I had Sarah from DD Geopolitics on last week. I'm joining her channel. She got a banger of a channel. So I'm gonna be on DD Geopolitics for the first time on Thursday. So yeah, that's on Thursday. I gotta see when I can go live. But I got a lot of content. You guys got a lot to catch up on. I think I was live 5 out of the last 6 days. Maybe 4 out of the last 6 days. Yeah, so you guys got a lot of content to catch up on anyway. I got a hotspot video that's discussing Biden's reaction to the ICC. Yeah, you can hear a little bit of it. I got proof of it. So I got to get offline so we can finish that up. Big shout out to Zoya, who's helping us get these banger guests as always. And I'm sure Zoya got some more stuff she's cooking up in the lab for us. I have nothing else to add. Make sure you guys follow my brother JB Font. He has a live stream on his channel. I think Sabby has something live coming up as well today. Like, I'm just super happy that we're so close and connected now. As a team, I'm very looking forward to the Sabby and JB show anyway on Thursday. Anyway, I'll see you guys. Remember, a hotspot video coming here very soon. See you guys soon.